Welcome to this Red Wing software video for CenterPoint Payroll. The subject of this video is W-2 forms. This is the first of two videos in this series. This first video will take you through everything you need to do within CenterPoint to prepare yourself for processing W-2s. The second video will take you through the integration that CenterPoint has with a product called Atrix to actually produce your W-2 forms, and it'll take you through all the steps within Atrix to get those forms out. Although the actual forms will be produced within Atrix, we will be sending the information to Atrix through CenterPoint. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to make sure that that information that we're sending to Atrix is correct. And there's a number of ways that we can go about doing that. So one of the things that you might want to do is go ahead and verify first all of the names, addresses, and social security numbers of your um, employees. And so one of the reports that you can use to go ahead and do that can be found underneath reports. And it can be found underneath payroll tax reports. And underneath federal tax reports, there is a report called the W-2 summary. You could also search for the W-2 summary up in the search bar there. You're going to select the year that you're going to go ahead and produce these for, and then the employer that you want to produce those for. And then the tax form type, you have the option of whether or not you want 941 or 943 there. So you can go ahead and choose that, or you can choose all. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, if you are an employer that is agricultural, for example, you might want to go ahead and make sure that you select 943 there. That way you can also make sure that all of your employees are marked to be 943 employees rather than 941. The default is going to be 941 in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and click Preview on this report. And we'll let it generate here. And there's a couple of things that you'll definitely want to check here. You're going to want to check, first, of course, that their address is correct. You're going to want to make sure that any tax ID information is correct. And then what it's going to show you are the taxable wages for each of these areas. So what are their taxable wages? This is what's going to show up in the federal taxable wages box on the W-2. And then this is the tax amount that was taken out for that tax. Okay, so it's going to show you that for all of your taxes, and then it'll show you any deductions that are going to show up on the W-2 too. And for those deductions, it'll also tell you whether or not those are going to appear in any of the other boxes there. Okay, and what box it will show up in. Okay, so that's really all you're going to see are the deductions that would show up in the different boxes on the W-2. So this is a great, very summarized report giving you most of the information that you need. Now, what happens if you need to change an employee's address? Let's say, for example, that Sam Apple here is really at 8733 Champion Way rather than 8732. Well, the easiest way to do that is to go ahead and edit the employees by going to Setup and Employees. And you can edit an employee by either highlighting them and clicking the Edit button at the bottom, or you can just double click on the employee name. And that'll take you into editing the employee. And then you can make whatever changes you need to there. So if I just needed to change his address there to 8733 Champion Way, I can do that and then click Save. But while we're here, one of the things I want to point out is that if any of the employees were missing off of that W-2 summary report, then it's possible that you don't have them marked to receive a W-2. And we can check that out on the payroll tab over here. On the payroll tab over here on the bottom right-hand side, you'll see there's a box there called Wages Reported On. And you'll just want to make sure that that is set to wages reported on the W-2. Okay, and while we're at it here, if you're an agricultural employer and you ran that previous report, the W-2 summary filtered for 943 employees and they didn't show up on the report, but they are marked to receive a W-2, it may mean that you just need to check this box to make sure that they are checked to be agricultural employees. Okay, on this screen as well, right below that selection as to whether or not their wages are being reported on a W-2 or on a 1099, is a box to consent to an electronic W-2. Okay, Atrix is going to offer you many options to produce your W-2s. One of those options may be to print the W-2s yourself. Okay, another option that they have is for them to do the processing. Of course, that's going to come as a cost. Within that, they have two options. One of them is that they would go ahead and print and mail each of your employees their W-2. Okay. The second option is that you could send just an electronic version of the W-2 to your employees. Okay. However, and that's going to be a little bit cheaper for you than if they have to print them and mail them. However, in order to have your employees receive just an electronic copy of the W-2, they do need to sign a consent form to receive just an electronic copy of the W-2. Okay, so if they do sign that consent form, you can check the box here and then we'll feed that information into Atrix so that Atrix knows that that employee has agreed to just receive an electronic copy of their W-2. Okay, so then we also want to make sure that those deductions that were on that screen, so I'm going to save this employee and I'm going to get out of employees and I'm going to come back to this report. If any of these deductions are not showing up or they're showing up with the wrong box in the wrong code, you can go ahead and make changes to them by going ahead and going to Setup, Payroll Details, and Deductions and Benefits. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go into my 401k percentage of wages because that is one that does need to appear on my W-2. So if we go ahead and we edit it, you'll see over here for the deduction portion of this, remember a deduction benefit is displaying both information about both the deduction and if there's a benefit portion, there's also going to be information about the benefit. So over on the left-hand side here is the employee deduction. So if that employee deduction amount needs to show up on the W-2, this is where you want to select what box and what code that needs to be for the W-2. Okay, now if the benefit needed to also be on the W-2, you could choose a box and a code for the W-2 over there. And then you just go ahead and click Save on them after you've made the changes. Okay, then the last thing you'll want to verify is on your employer setup itself. We just want to make sure that all of your federal EIN numbers and state tax ID numbers are correct so that we feed Atrix the correct information. So you're going to do that by going to Setup, Payroll Details, and to Employers. And then for each of your employers, you'll want to go into um, their setup by just double clicking on them to edit them. And you're going to go to the taxes tab. And what I want you to do is just kind of work your way down through this tab. And every time it displays a tax ID, I just want you to verify that that is the correct tax ID. So there's my federal tax ID. That's going to be the same for Social Security and Medicare. When I come down to Colorado, I'm going to have a state withholding ID and probably a state unemployment ID. Sometimes it uses the same ID, so it might be the same, but you want to make sure that for each of the taxes, just work your way on down through the list and make sure for each of the taxes that any of the tax IDs that we have in the system are correct. I'm going to click Save on that, and I'm going to go ahead and close out of there. After all of that information, I'm going to go ahead and close this report. After all of that information is already verified, you're ready to go ahead and start your tax forms. Okay, to start the tax forms, you're going to go to to reports, to federal and state payroll forms, and you're going to go to federal tax forms. Okay, if there is any update, you're going to normally say yes here. Just for our time's sake, I'm going to say no. But normally, if there is an update, you'll want to go ahead and select the update here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say no just so we can get to the same screen, but typically you would want to say yes if there was an update. Otherwise, you risk going ahead and producing these on a form that is expired or invalid. Okay, you're going to choose which employer. If you have multiple employers, you're going to need to do this for each of your employers. And then you're going to choose your reporting method. Okay, so there's a couple different reporting methods out here. Draft, if you choose draft, it allows you to go through the whole process, but it actually doesn't save a history of it. And if you were to go and print the documents, they would say draft on them. So they're not submittable. But it lets you go through the process and just see what everything is like without going ahead and creating a history file or risking or accidentally risking doing any kind of a submission. Okay, the normal method is what you're going to go through when you're ready to do these forms. So you're going to go through the normal method, and at the very end of the normal method, it'll ask you to either print or e-file these forms. You can e-file then through Atrix. Um, normal method is what you'll do when you're ready to go ahead and generate it. And then the history option, if you chose that, what it would do is look back in your history files and see if there was a previously run version of this report and bring up a list of those previously run versions of the report so you can go back and view it. Okay, so typically you're either going to be doing probably normal or draft. Okay, after that, you're just going to select the correct report. So you're going to want to make sure that you select the W-2, W-3 report for your year that you're going ahead and producing those for. And then you want to choose your year and whether or not you're producing this for non-agricultural employees, agricultural employees, or both. And from there, you'll just go ahead and click OK. And at that point, it'll launch the Atrix Tax Forms program to either print or e-file your W-2s. Now, any changes that it's going to bring up a little wizard for you to walk through, and any changes that you make in Atrix will print on the W-2s, but it won't update CenterPoint. So if you wind up changing like an employee's address in Atrix, it'll only be in Atrix and not back in CenterPoint. So we don't feed the data two ways. We only feed the data to Atrix, not them back to us. Okay, if you need to make any changes in CenterPoint, you can close Atrix, return to CenterPoint, and then relaunch Atrix to start the process over. Okay, at this point, we are done with all of the preparation that you would need to do within CenterPoint, and so you're ready for the second video in this series, which is the video that'll take you through the remaining portion of this wizard for the W-2s within Atrix.